For the past month, we've been traveling through Mexico in this van, and the areas where we're going do not have clean drinking water. We have to fill our water tank at purified water filling stations. It's only about 120 Mexican pesos or $7 US to fill our 25-gallon tank, but in some more rural areas, they don't have these filling stations. And in those situations, we have to buy cases of bottled water, which I hate doing. It's expensive, it's wasteful. We end up with all of these plastic water bottles that I want to recycle, but I know that more likely than not, they'll just end up in a landfill. And it gave me an idea. What if I used all these bottles to create something that we can always use while living in our van? A free hot shower. This is what I'm envisioning for the reservoir. A 4x4 grid of disposable water bottles that we can mount on our roof. This is a mix of 1 and 1.2 liter bottles, which gives us a total capacity of 18.2 liters or about 5 gallons. Now for reference, 5 gallons is the amount of water that me, Eden, Abby, and Penny all use combined in a day. So I think it should be enough for at least one good length shower. Now, a project like this can be pretty intimidating. It requires a lot of engineering, multiple tubes coming together, valves, a structure. So I like to start with a simple first step. We need a way to mount each of these bottles to a frame. We need to model some bottle threads. Let's see if we can get one of those done before we start thinking too big. It's really easy to make threads in Fusion 360, but they have a limited library of thread types, and it does not include these bottle cap threads. Now, I've modeled threads from scratch before. It is a lot of work. I've actually made a video about it. So instead of putting in an hour of unnecessary labor, I checked printables.com to see if anyone else had already designed a threaded bottle cap, and sure enough, I found a couple. I downloaded one, printed it out. Sure enough, it was too small, so I tried scaling it up by 7%, printed it again. That time I could actually thread it on, but the fit was very weird, and it actually threaded on diagonally. It was at that point that I realized that these are actually multi-start threads. These bottles have multi-start threads, which mean that the threads start in multiple spots. There's actually 3 of them, 1, 2, 3. And this model I downloaded is only a single start thread. The thread only starts in one spot. Sometimes you try to do things the simple way, but in reality, they're just complicated. So I think we just gotta model these from scratch. Creating threads from scratch basically involves taking a ton of measurements, writing them all down, and then transferring them to a 3D model. I was able to construct the majority of the bottle cap with a series of cylinders, and then the difficult part was actually modeling the threads. For this, I used the coil tool. It was actually pretty simple since there's a built-in triangle cross-section. And I was pretty stoked when my first try threaded successfully onto the bottle. I was like, great, thought this was gonna be super hard and time consuming, it's nice and simple, until I filled up the bottle, turned it upside down, and water started leaking all over the place. So it was back to the 3D model where I beefed up the threads and tried a version 2. This one threaded on tighter, but I had the same leaking problem. At that point, I changed tactics, kind of found a happy medium with the thread size, and added a slight taper to the bottle cap itself. That way it sort of squeezes the bottle as you screw it into place. This seemed like it was holding water at first, but as soon as I applied a bit of pressure to the bottle, again, we had some leakage. It was starting to become clear that a watertight seal was going to be really difficult with a rigid 3D printed bottle cap. So I modeled up an O-ring, printed this out of TPU, a flexible filament, pressed it into place, and sure enough, it finally held water, even when I squeezed the bottle to add a bit of pressure. So the simple first step that I thought would take an hour ended up taking all day. But we got it, baby. So we want to make a 4x4 grid. I can create a rectangular pattern. I want all 16 bottles to flow into a single outlet. And this was surprisingly easy to accomplish with the pipe tool. All I had to do was draw the path that I want my pipe to follow, define the section, and Fusion automatically creates a nice, smooth, flowing pipe. I did have to repeat this for all 16 bottles, but with a shape like this, there's lots of symmetry. So it was just a matter of mirror, circular geometry, and boom, I have this awesome octopus spiderweb of flowing pipes. The next step is to turn this tangle of pipes into a functioning shower. And for that, I'm gonna use this outdoor shower attachment that we bought to attach our sink so we can use our electric water heater to have hot outdoor showers. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Why am I designing this overly complicated 3D printed invention if we already have a way to take hot outdoor showers? Well, an electric water heater takes a crazy amount of energy. Ours draws about 1400 watts, which when you're living in a van, that really puts a dent in your batteries. Later on in the video, when we have the solar shower finished, I'll do a side-by-side comparison so we can see how much energy we actually save by using the power of the sun. But for now, we need a way to attach this to our octopus. Fusion 360 had some built-in threads that looked suspiciously close to these ones. So I went ahead, printed out a test piece, and sure enough, it threads on and mostly holds water. There's a little bit of leakage, but I think by replacing the Teflon tape with thread sealant, we should have a mostly watertight seal. It's good enough for now. Let's move on to the next problem. I want to mount the solar shower up here on the roof of our van, and 5 gallons of water weighs 41 pounds, so this mount has to be strong. We have this 80/20 roof rack, and I spent a while trying to figure out a way to mount the solar shower to the roof rack. I even modeled up some 80/20 with the plan of 3D printing those bars, but the design just did not seem right. When I hit these sticking points, I like to switch gears completely and allow my subconscious to work on the problem. So I strengthened the octopus with some tie rods, and sure enough, the solution came to me. We're not actually gonna be using the solar shower while driving, so it doesn't have to be rigidly mounted to the roof. I needed to think more like our Starlink. This is what we use to get internet in the middle of nowhere. It's basically a satellite dish, and it just sits on top of our van. We have a Ram ProMaster, the roof is very flat, and when this is sitting down, it is not going anywhere. It is very windy right now. The wind picks up even more overnight, and this thing does not budge. And I think 41 pounds of water on a similar tripod setup would be very stable. So I designed 4 folding legs splayed out at 120 degrees for maximum stability. I made sure it was tall enough so that there's room for the hose to come out the bottom. And I split the solar shower into 4 parts so I can actually 3D print it. Oh, and did I mention that I'm printing this out of PETG, which is literally made of recycled water bottles? At this point, I've been working on the design for days, and I can only think through so many possible issues and print tiny test pieces. I think it's time to just print the whole thing. When I saw that each of the 4 pieces would take over 7 hours to print, I played with the orientation until I found this one that cut a full hour off of the print time and used way less support material. I hit print, but as some people on Instagram correctly guessed, the very small contact area led to a bed adhesion failure pretty early into the print. And it's a good thing this happened. I did a post-mortem on the failed print and realized that this strange print orientation kind of mangled the threads and made it super hard to thread on the bottle. So I went back to the original orientation. Takes a bit longer and uses a fair amount of support material, but sometimes to get a good final result, you gotta just do the work. Or in this case, the printer has to do the work. While the rest of the solar shower prints, I'd like to thank the sponsor for this video, Bet Slumber. Getting a good night's sleep has always been very important to me, and that might seem easy in the van since we always park in beautiful, secluded locations, but unfortunately, that's not always the reality. Sometimes we have to spend the night in a Walmart parking lot or a rest stop, and in those situations, it's pretty much guaranteed that I'll be woken up 5 or 6 times in the night by car doors slamming, people blasting music, trucks downshifting on the highway. That is, until now. Bet Slumber noise-canceling earplugs ensure I get a good night's sleep no matter where our van is parked. These lightweight, comfortable earplugs are engineered for sleep and feature industrial-grade noise reduction. They don't take batteries, but use a honeycomb microporous crystal filter to achieve a noise reduction rating of 19.1 decibels. Oh wow, that's quiet. I've used sleep earplugs in the past, and these are by far the lowest profile ones I have ever used. I really appreciate that because I roll around in my sleep, and this makes sure that they don't knock out of my ears in the middle of the night. If you want a better, peaceful, quiet night's sleep, Bet Slumber is launching a Kickstarter on March 12th, so click the link in the description to learn more and back the project. The second quadrant is currently printing. It still has 3.5 hours left, but we need to head into town to do some laundry, and we don't want to wait 3.5 hours. So we're going to keep the print going while we drive out of here on a pretty bumpy road. I've 3D printed while driving on rough roads before. I've actually made a whole video about it, but I've never 3D printed something that needed to be watertight while driving. So we'll see how this affects it.
I feel like you made that seem like laundry was a choice. Our dog threw up all over our sheets. We have to go do laundry today.
Let's get out of here. All right, we are safely on the highway. Eden navigate us expertly through that dirt road and up onto the blacktop, and let's see if we can see any discernible difference on the 3D print. Looking good to me. 3D printing while driving. Do it more. I ended up printing 2 of the 4 sections while we were driving in the van, and honestly, I can't even tell which 2 sections it is. As I've seen in the past, printing while driving in the van, at least on highways, does not cause huge quality differences in the print. And for a functional print like this, might as well take advantage of that driving time and stay productive. Anyways, let's put these together. These tie rods also act as alignment points. I modeled some pins into them so we can press them together with some glue. You can just add a bit of CA glue to the pins. Press these guys together. I don't want these shifting around on me, so I'm going to spray on some activator. Now, as you can see, we have a pretty bad gap in the middle there. That's going to be a problem if we want this to be watertight. So I'm going to start by just filling it with some CA glue. I was able to 90% fill the cracks with just layers of CA glue and activator, but this needs to be 100% sealed if it's actually going to be watertight under pressure. So I also have some silicone sealant. I'll go over all of the gaps with that, and that should do the trick. I can glue the shower hose adapter into place. Finally, I printed 16 of those TPU O-rings, so we can go ahead and press those into place. I printed the 4 legs as well as these TPU pads to add some grippiness to the roof of the van. Unfortunately, TPU is not made from recycled water bottles, but I'll settle for 99% of this thing being recycled. Now we're ready to attach the legs themselves to the solar shower. So I have some machine screws as well as some 3D printed washers to reduce friction. We're gonna have a little sandwich situation. I'm actually gonna put a little grease on touching surfaces to reduce friction. This is just super lube, the same stuff I use in my 3D printer. A washer inside. There we go. We got legs. All right, moment of truth. I have my 16 water bottles right here. Not gonna lie, I am genuinely worried about the strength of this. I'm really wishing I bulked up some of these thicknesses right now. I feel like I went really thin on all the pipes and all the struts. I could have easily made this like one solid block, but I don't know, I was really into the swoopy design. All right, they are all screwed into place. All right, so I genuinely cannot think of a way to get this safely onto the roof without breaking it. So Eden had a good idea. I'm gonna take all the water bottles out, get the solar shower onto the roof, and try to just flip each bottle in. We're gonna spill a bunch of water, but I think that's the only way we can actually get this thing set up without destroying it. All right, let's try this again. So here's the plan. I need to flip these over as fast as I can into each slot, screw it into place so that the water doesn't come shooting back up out of the empty holes. That's because the pressure will be above the level of the solar shower. We have a bit of lag time because water will collect in the shower hose, but once that's filled up, water will probably start coming out of these. So it's so janky. I just have to do it as fast as I can. All right, that works pretty well. Ah! Oh boy. All right, well, the strength of the solar shower frame is holding up, which I'm very happy about. As long as I don't like squeeze the bottles, we don't lose too much water. There we go. All right, it was chaotic, but we have a full grid of 16 water bottles. Probably don't have 5 full gallons anymore. I'm guessing closer to 4. But we'll give this a couple hours to heat up in the sun and see if we can get a nice hot shower. It's turning out better than I thought it would. So the water's been on the roof of the van heating up for about 2 hours. We could go for longer, but my really thin pipes are coming back to bite me. Water has been leaking out this entire time. So I'm taking the trade-off of long shower for hot shower. But this is the moment of truth. After hours of work, days of printing, this is the hot shower that I've been working towards. You ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. Okay, let me try coming down a little bit. Oh, there we go. Oh wow, it is not warm. But we have a bit of pressure. I also realized that we're creating a vacuum in the bottles because there's no vent on the top. Oh man. I really thought that like a clear water bottle would generate heat in the sun because you get all the refraction from the light. But apparently that's not the case. Black heats up a lot more. Absorbing the sunlight outweighs the refraction of the sunlight in that greenhouse effect as you would have in a clear bottle. Okay, honestly, this is working a little better than I thought it would. Yeah, now that we have a bit of a pressure going. Oh, there we go. It is barely room temperature right here. All right, I'm genuinely not comfortable right now. It is cold, I'm in the shade. Kneeling in the dirt.
Penny was like, what are you doing now, Dad?
That's a great question, Penny. What am I doing? And in that moment, kneeling in the dirt, soaking wet and cold, what am I doing? What am I even doing right now? That perfectly summed up how I felt. It's a very common feeling at a certain stage of a DIY project, when you're knee-deep in something that was an incredible amount of work, but doesn't seem to be working. And it doesn't have to be something as ridiculous as a 3D printed solar shower made from recycled water bottles, because let's face it, this is a completely unnecessary project. Solar showers for van life are like a completely solved problem. People have been mounting black ABS pipes to the roof of their vans for years. It's a cheap, easy way to get a free hot shower. It works, and that's why I was feeling so frustrated and just down on myself in that moment, because I had made this thing that was unnecessarily complicated, but didn't even work, so what's the point? In that first shot, maybe an hour after I had the idea for this video, I just was so excited about this idea. Even though I knew in that moment it wasn't practical, even though I already knew about this ABS pipe shower. But sometimes when you're so excited about an idea, you just have to make it, even if it's not practical, because that's kind of what it's all about, isn't it? Being excited about something and then bringing that thing to life. Maybe the point isn't for it to be functional. Maybe the point is how much I learned in this video, how much fun I had iterating through like 6 designs of a bottle cap attachment and designing this swoopy octopus. It's so hard to articulate. making something that's not functional because it takes so much time, but if you're a maker, you know that it's inherently worth it. On a less philosophical note, I do think my solar shower could work pretty well if you spray painted the bottles black, beefed up the thicknesses, figured out a better filling method. In other words, re-engineered the entire thing. Now, I'm not gonna do that because the ABS pipe method already works, and let's say you did have one of those solar showers. How much energy are you actually saving by using it instead of an electric water heater? To answer that question, I set up a control experiment, which was very welcome after being cold and wet in the shade. I put a second camera on our battery monitor so we can see exactly how much power a comfortable shower uses. 3, 2, 1. Oh my God, that is so nice. We actually have substantial pressure. Woo! Eden, why don't we do this more often? I think it's because it actually just takes a ton of electricity.
And water.
So one downside of showering with a small electric water heater is the tank is pretty small. It's what, 3 gallons?
I think 5, but yeah.
So the hot water does start to run out relatively quickly. It is no longer hot, it is now warm. So I'm just gonna cut it off when I would comfortably want to cut off this shower. It's been probably around 3 minutes, and yeah, we're officially at lukewarm. So I'm gonna turn it off. We'll see how much electricity that used. So basically, our electric water heater is a tank with an electric heating element. Cold water flows in, the heating element heats the water, and hot water flows out. Now, when the water heater detects that the water inside has fallen below the set temperature, it switches on that heating element full blast. And when that heating element is on, it draws 1,365 watts, and it will continue to draw 1,365 watts until the water is back at that target temperature. Now, when we took the shower, that power draw happened for 7 minutes and 12 seconds. And if we take the power draw and multiply it by the time, that gives us 163.8 watt hours. Now stay with me here. The house batteries for the van, not the car batteries, but the batteries that we installed to run all of our appliances, have a total capacity of 540 amp hours. Different unit, I know, but the industry is weird. This is just how it works. If we take that 540 amp hours and multiply it by 12 volts, the system voltage, that gives us the total capacity in watt hours. See where I'm going here? 6,480 watt hours is our total capacity. So if we take 163.8 watt hours, the amount of power drawn by the shower, and divide it by the total battery capacity, that gives us 2.5%. That is the total amount of battery capacity that we used by taking a comfortable hot shower. Now, 2.5% might not sound like a lot, but we have a relatively large battery system in our van. I mean, each of these Battleborn GC3s weighs like 80 pounds. Also, our batteries were only at 24% when I took the electric shower. So in reality, heating that water used 10.4% of our battery capacity at that time. And that's a big deal if it's a cloudy day, which means no solar input, or you're not planning on driving for a while, which means no electricity from the alternator charger. The reality of living in a van is you're constantly aware of resource management, whether that's electricity, water, or propane. So getting free hot water from the sun is kind of magical. If you would like to directly support this channel, you can gain exclusive access to my behind the scenes Instagram page and Discord community by supporting this channel on Patreon. I would like to give a special thank you to my top supporters on Patreon, Paige Arlt and my mom, Kathy Kurt. Thanks, Mom. I love you.